Hey there, chatters. I'm Nat.
And I'm Kat, and welcome to the CrimeChat. I am your forensic femme fatale. Natalie is your true crime addict connoisseur.
We're just two normal girls who obsess about dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown.
Yes, we do. Here's your disclaimer, chatters. The following CrimeChat contains adult content today and descriptions of historical, ancient Egypt type of violent scenarios today, if that sets a setting for you. So your listener discretion is advised.
You have been warned. And before we get into today's crime chat, Kat, what have you done?
We had some family here recently, and my favorite thing was Scarlett helped me put the ornaments on the Christmas tree, and she did so well. I mean, they're all in like one spot.
Right.
But I went and got the stool out of the kitchen and brought it in there so I could reach a little bit higher and put some ornaments up high. She saw me step on it and she's like, ooh, I want to do that. So she got on the little step stool. And once she realized there was more to put on, like she would take one, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. And then I was like, but wait, there's more. And she's like, oh. And she got the hang of it real fast. It was so much fun.
So wait, she thought she only had that one ornament to place, so she just kept on redoing it?
Yeah. She's like, this is cool. I'll put it on, take it off. And it was so neat to have her figure out, some of the ones that have like the string attached to it where the hanger is kind of attached to the ornament. Yeah. Watching her little fingers like spread it apart to put it on the branch. She figured it out. She's such a smart cookie.
Oh, my God.
It was great.
So what did you cook for Thanksgiving? Because you had it up by you, right?
Yeah, the traditionals. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans. We had mac and cheese, rolls, cranberry sauce. I mean, like all the traditional stuff.
Do you put powdered mustard in your mac and cheese?
No, never have.
Apparently it's a Southern thing.
Really?
Yeah. I was looking at the YouTube for mac and cheese recipes, and apparently like the South loves to put some type of mustard, either a mustard powder or Dijon mustard in their mac and cheese. I'm like, that actually, I would try that. That actually, it says enhances the cheddar flavor.
Okay. Nope, didn't try
a
that.
try.
I'd never heard of it, but my husband may have. I mean, he's a cook in the house, so,
So I went to my parents for Thanksgiving. Everything was amazing. Ate way too much. I mean, I was feeling it days after, but like my aunt makes these amazing stuffed artichokes.
Oh, you remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
But they're belly bombs, but they're so freaking good. But you eat one, it's like eating an entire container of Italian seasoning breadcrumbs.
Oh, jeez.
It's so good.
Oh, my gosh. Sounds really good, though. It sounds really good.
So what else have you been up to?
So have you seen that new JonBenet documentary?
I have seen that it's out, but I haven't seen it, no.
Well, spoiler alert, there's no like significant like this is the person.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it in our first season. I think it was in December because it happened over Christmas. So we did it as one of our Christmas episodes for our first season. And there wasn't anything new that came out of that. It was the same one weird guy that was like living overseas saying that he claimed that he killed JonBenet and ended up being like in a sting operation, kind of thing. I think he was in Thailand and
he was the teacher.
Yes, the teacher. He has 3 names. Something Carr, I think is his last name.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, DNA excluded him as much as he confessed and everything like that. So that, I mean, they thought they were on the right path, but lo and behold, it wasn't him. But there wasn't really, it was good. How it was put together was very good. And actually, Chris, when he watched it, he's like, after seeing this, I have less suspicion on the family than he had prior. And I was like, well, that's valid. That's true.
Yeah.
All the family was excluded with the DNA and everything. And I just had that weird feeling, though, that something more was known. More so maybe with Mom. But, of course, she's passed away, so.
Yeah.
It was interesting. And then because John Ramsey was married and had other kids before meeting and marrying Patty and having the 2 kids. So one of his older sons was also actually interviewed on the documentary, which was super interesting to get that perspective as well.
Right.
But there wasn't anything that just kind of came out and was like, this is the silver bullet, this is the smoking gun, this is... Yeah. It was all stuff that I think most people know, other than the fact that they're still actively investigating. They are now trying to use genetic genealogy
Mm-hmm.
to find that sample that was found in her underwear to match it with somebody who may be related to whoever left that sample.
Okay.
So,
Something.
I mean, so it was good. How it was put together was very, very well done.
Mm-hmm.
No smoking gun, but you know what? It's one of those cases.
Yeah.
And honestly, we talked about it before, kind of how much the initial part in the investigation really played a part into where it is now, and the possibility of the fact that that DNA sample that was collected from her underwear could be contaminated, possibly, so,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Interesting.
Then we watched this TV series. I want to say it was on Apple TV. It's called Catch-22, and it takes place in World War II era, and it follows this bombardier who basically is trying to get out of the war. It has a realism, but also like a comic twist to it. And it's like a comedy. It's a
Dark comedy.
What do they call it? A dramedy? Yeah, like how he tries to get out of flying again. And I think it was based on a true story, because every time they were there, like, you need to have so many sorties or so many flights before you can redeploy and go home or get discharged. Well, it was at 25. He was at like 24. New commander comes in and bumps it up to 30. So he's like, fuck. Gotta do 5 more. So then every time he's like, he has this relationship with the doctor, and the doctor was examining him, and he's like, does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? He's like, yes, yes, yes. And then he's like basically calling his bluff. If you would have said it was your liver, we would have had something and had to have run tests. And he's like, it's my liver. It's my liver. And so it had a nice like comedy twist to it, especially for such a serious. I think a lot of those World War II movies have that very serious setting to it, and it did have some serious parts to it, but it was really good. I recommend it. And then last night, I watched a movie called A Christmas Horror Story.
Okay. All right. You got my attention.
It was on, I want to say it was on Hulu.
Don't say Hallmark. If you said Hallmark,
No.
nothing. You go to
No.
Although Hallmark to me is a horror channel.
Well, in its own way. It was super interesting, and I was just kind of flipping through going, like, I've seen Krampus, we watched Violent Night again the other night, like, I wanted just something else.
Right.
And so I was kind of like flipping through. Chris was gone. He wouldn't have wanted to watch it anyways. But it was kind of follows 3 different storylines in one. And it's all narrated by William Shatner, who is a radio host. And he's like kind of narrating the incidents that have happened in previous Christmases. Like there's some teenagers whose bodies were found. There is a little bit of a Krampus twist to it as well. So I liked it. It honestly made me jump a few times. Jumping out at you and making you go, ah! There was one of the storylines to me was more funny than anything, and it was basically like the elves turned evil zombies.
Well, wait a minute. I think I may have
Santa.
I think I may have seen that. I've seen that.
Oh, really?
Because what you did with the evil elves, I remember seeing something
Do you remember
like that.
If William Shatner was in it as a radio host? Do you remember that?
Don't.
No.
But
that was kind of like the draw to me because it said it was starring William Shatner. I didn't know anybody else that was in it.
All right.
It's so funny. It was like he would never watch that with me. Any of the other, like, it was hard enough to get him to watch Krampus with me. But I mean, that's about it. Just getting ready for the holidays. I got almost all of my shopping done. Just a few more things that, 1, I'm waiting to get that I've already ordered so I can send it out. And then 2, I've got my older son to still buy for because he has not yet sent me his Christmas list. Do it, son. Do it. Not that he listens, but it's in the universe now.
He can watch the episode.
That's right.
Send the list. Send the list.
I might not check it twice. He might just have to send it. We've got plenty of time, though. So how about you?
I'm waiting for this one game because I told you I bought PlayStation 5.
Yes.
And there is this one game that is the reason why I bought the system is because I really want to play this game. I played the demo. It is insane. It is so flippin' good. Like, it's called We Harvest Shadows.
Ooh.
It's a farming horror simulator. So it's like a simulation. So you're pretending to be like whatever it is, and like this guy is just a farmer. Not even. He's not a farmer. He's just somebody. He's somebody who left the city life, moved to a farm to get away or run away from his problems. So that's like the beginning of the story. And then it goes into how the farm is haunted, but is it haunted or is it mental health? Like, it's really good. Oh,
Okay.
it's really good.
Okay.
And I didn't realize this. I did some research on it. So the developer, his inspiration for this was Christopher Knight. Christopher Knight was that guy that left it all behind, went into the woods, never came back, and they found him like 27 years later after a string of like break-ins to a lodge. Like he was just stealing people's stuff and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
like he was just living on the property. So he kind of like that was his inspiration, like somebody who's suffering from some serious mental health that just don't want to be around people anymore. And what would happen in being such in a secluded area? Like how would your mental health decompensate? Like how
Yeah.
what would it look like? What would and it's good because he's got like this one picture in the living room in the video game where it says when you walk up to the picture, it says like, keep an eye on this photo because it will change based on your mental health. And you
Oh.
walk past it and there's like a scary face, or you walk past it and there's like a door with the hands. It's crazy. It's
Oh,
so
cool.
good. But that's not coming out until 2025, the full story. So the next thing is Horror in the High Desert. So this is a movie on Amazon. I have not watched it yet. I just actually learned about it right before I jumped onto this episode. So
Okay.
it basically is about a guy, another one who went out hiking on his own, and he was a photographer, so he was taking pictures of his journey. And apparently, this part of the desert is haunted, and it's kind of like it's a documentary, but it's not true. What do you call it? Mockumentary or something?
So I looked it up. It says it's loosely based on an actual disappearance of Kenny Veach, who vanished in Nevada while supposedly recording a YouTube video.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So like
Is it like a Blair Witch?
I don't know. I don't know, but I know there's a lot of emphasis on where and how they found the camera. So apparently they found the camera with his hands still attached, but the rest of the body was gone. And then there's also the footage. So it looks like it looks fun to watch. And, that's just
Yeah.
I love stuff like this.
Yeah.
Next thing I've been doing is I've been making my murder candles. So done it in a while. I've never made murder candles before. I've made candles before, but this time I'm trying to add a little bit of the true crime-esque to it, and it is.
Is it horrifying?
It's horrifying. Definitely. But yeah, that's basically it for me. So.
Okay.
All right. So now, before we get into your story,
Yes.
you asked me to do a segment on Nat's Nutty News. Bring it back in, right?
Yeah. We're going to be doing our first crime and cosmetics of the season.
Yay!
And we've kind of beat the beauty crime background to death.
Have we? There are so many to choose from.
There's so much, but I mean, we've talked about poisons. This story that I'm going to go over today is kind of similar, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But there really wasn't like an interesting intro to use, I think, for it. So
okay.
I was like, yeah, we haven't done Nat's Nutty News this season yet, so let's do 2 newbies for the season.
All right. Well, welcome back, Crime Chat Chatters. Tonight we bring you one of our most popular segments, Nat's Nutty News. This is where Nat covers some of the most ridiculous headlines from around the globe. From the bizarre to the unbelievable, we have it all here for you now. Remember, if you heard it from Nutty Nat, it must be true. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into our first one. Florida man robs gas station with banana, demands 37 scratch-off tickets and a slushie.
That's very specific.
It is very specific.
37.
This was published by the Miami Times on March 15th of 2024. This is all 2024, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Reporter Kelly Goodman wrote, 31-year-old Kyle Peels,
banana peels.
I just made that connection. McGrath thought he was tough until he slipped on his own shoelace and fled empty-handed. Witnesses say he made monkey noises during the robbery, and the police described the incident as low-hanging fruit.
Oh,
So
look at the puns. I love
I
it.
think Kelly Goodman kind of like was laughing while she was writing this. So
Yeah.
good girl, you know. McGrath was found hiding in a nearby dumpster eating one of the bananas he stole because, you know, he was snacking on it. He was arrested and is now banned from entering any gas station that sells fruit, which is not true. I don't think it's true, but that was in the story. So I think it was kind of like her comedic take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one. Texas law burns son's body, claims I thought he was a zombie.
I saw this. Like I saw
Crazy.
something on it today, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like an update or something. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. So this was published by the Dallas Morning News on April 22nd. Reporter Chris Harper wrote, when asked why he did it, Michael Howard shrugged and said zombies were trending on Netflix. Local sheriff department described the scene as an episode of bad decision making meets true crime.
Mm.
Howard was sentenced to life in prison.
Mm.
The judge remarked, even in Texas, the zombie defense isn't a thing.
Mm.
Howard's Netflix subscription has also been revoked.
Good on you, Netflix.
I know. Next one is mermaid washes ashore in the UK.
Oh.
Turned out to be a hairy seal. This was published by the Norfolk Gazette on May 3rd. Reporter Maggie Townsend wrote, locals have freaked out, calling it a sea goddess, but marine experts say, relax, it's just an ugly seal. Marine biologists pleaded officially, like they went on record pleading, requesting fewer crazy calls about a mermaid, and just they actually asked the locals to take a nap. They were like, just relax. Relax. There's nothing to see here. The seal was given a proper burial by the locals, who stated, the least we can do for the ocean goddess. Marine biologists collectively sighed. All right, now, next one, and the last one. Man attacks fast food worker with mayo-filled water gun over napkins. Did you hear about this one? I know.
No.
Yeah. Published by the Orlando Sentinel on July 10th, reporter Mark Timms wrote, the suspect squirted mayonnaise at an employee, yelling, this is what you get for one napkin. Witnesses say the worker smelled like a potato salad, and the suspect proudly declared himself Lord of Lunch Toppings. Authorities are calling this the condiment crime of the century. So this guy was mad that he only got one napkin with his meal. And I guess he wasn't getting another one, and he went berserk. So this is Florida. I mean, it's Orlando. The suspect was sentenced to 90 days of community service, cleaning up fast food wrappers with strict orders to avoid mayo. His first assignment, fold the napkins. Okay, so now it's time for Nat's Nutty News Trivia. Kat, here are two headlines. Which one is true and which one is false?
Oh, I was going to say two truths and a lie, but
Yeah.
one and one.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, the first one. A zoo in China successfully trained pandas to play soccer.
Okay.
The next one. A new law in Italy bans people from using umbrellas on windy days. Which one is true and which one is false, Kat?
Well, I want to say the umbrella windy days thing I've heard of before, so I'm going to go with that one being true, but I totally believe that they taught the pandas to play soccer.
So is that your final answer?
Yeah, sure.
It's false. Okay, so the true one is that a zoo did
I believe that.
teach pandas to play soccer. This is a true headline. A zoo in China trained pandas to kick soccer balls as part of an enrichment program to encourage exercise and playful behavior.
Yeah, I believe that. I haven't heard of it. There was somewhere that umbrellas were like banned for something recently, which is, did you like tweak a word or something in there? Because it sounds so familiar.
Well, let's Google it.
Oh.
Are umbrellas saying if it's used as a weapon?
Well, there's also, of course, you can't have too big of an umbrella on the beach.
Right.
Florida residents push back on town's beach umbrella ban.
Beach umbrella.
But there was something else. I don't remember. Anyway.
That's interesting. All right. Next question. You ready for the next two?
Oh, I thought that was it. Yes.
No, one more.
Okay.
All right. A town in Japan holds an annual competition where people race in giant pumpkins.
Okay.
All right. Next one. A group of scientists have discovered a new continent beneath Antarctica. Which one is true? Which one is false, Kat?
I'm going to go with that continent is true.
Aww.
Nope.
That's what it is, false. No, the true one is the town of Haraba in Japan hosts a quirky event where participants race in giant pumpkins. That is true.
I mean, I believe that too. I guess I should have gone more so with the believability than the obscene.
Yes. And you know what? When it comes to Antarctica, like, although this is false, while there are many exciting scientific discoveries happening in this place.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. Right now, there isn't a continent beneath it, but you never know. 2025 is coming, baby. We don't know. That could be another Nat's Nutty News.
Global warming,
Yeah,
like all
we
kinds
don't know
of shit's happening.
UFOs. We don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea. Nope. But we're here for it, and Nat's Nutty News will be covering it.
Yes. Well,
all right.
you.
Well, that's my intro.
Yes.
I hope that set you up. I don't think that set you up at all for your story, but it was fun.
No, but we are going to be talking a little bit about perception and what people think and even some things that you might not know. So today's first Crime and Cosmetics of Season 4 is going to be talking about one of the most powerful queens of all time, Cleopatra. She is most well known in today's society as portrayed by pop culture, such as the 1963 movie titled Cleopatra, starring the beautiful, stunning Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Now, in preparation for the film, women's magazines in the early 60s advertised how to use makeup, clothes, jewelry, hairstyles to achieve that Egyptian look that was very similar to what they kind of morphed into Cleopatra's look, or even Nefertiti. Because really, we'll kind of get to it, but other than like busts or paintings, we don't know exactly how they looked. By the end of the 20th century, there were 43 films, 200 plays and novels, 45 operas, and 5 ballets associated with Cleopatra. Now, Cleopatra was an Egyptian queen. This queen ruled from 51 to 30 BCE. Known for her beauty, charm, and intelligence, she was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra was involved in political alliances and relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, which ultimately led to her downfall after the defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra's forces at the Battle of Actium. Actium. Her death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of the Roman rule in Egypt. That might kind of sound familiar, but here are a few things that you might not know about this beautiful Egyptian queen. I'm going to cover 6 topics, and we're going to explore each of them for this Crime and Cosmetics segment. The first one, she was an Egyptian. Number 2, she was a scholar who spoke 9 languages.
Really? Oh, she was a polished young lady. Okay.
Number 3, she married both of her brothers.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
Number 4, she was really no beauty as much as we've portrayed her. Number 5, she was probably the richest person in the world at the time. And number 6, it's likely that an asp bite did not kill her. Cleopatra VII Thea Philopator, born in 69 BC, died August 10th, 30 BC, was queen of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt, I mentioned from 51 to 30 BCE, and the last active ruler. As a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she was a descendant of its founder, Ptolemy I. So Ptolemy I Soter, Soter, a Macedonian Greek general and companion and general of Alexander the Great. So her descendants was the general to Alexander the Great. Quick caveat, the males have like these 2 names. They have Ptolemy something. And it's usually like Cleopatra was Cleopatra VII. That means she had 6 others also named Cleopatra in her lineage. Oh,
I didn't know that.
So I'm going to use the name that is more associated with to differentiate instead of going like Ptolemy the First, Ptolemy the Eighth kind of thing, just to make it a little bit easier. So Ptolemy I Soter, he was a general of Alexander the Great, Cleopatra's descendant. When Alexander the Great invaded Egypt in 332 BCE, and it became under Macedonian and Greek control. Ptolemy I Soter, he reigned in Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 BCE and launched a dynasty of Greek-speaking rulers that lasted for nearly 3 centuries, ruling the empire for 10 generations of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Which brings us to our first point. Cleopatra was not Egyptian. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII Eulotes, I'm going to call him Eulotes. He looked at Cleopatra to continue the family line as she served as his protege, and everything Eulotes worked for and invested in was put into Cleopatra to ensure that she assumed power in a secure Egypt.
Wow.
It's unsure what exact ethnicity Cleopatra was. The Ptolemies were Macedonian Greek, so it's likely she was mostly Greek. However, there are some gaps in history from her family tree, specifically from her mother's side, in which some Egyptians could have been intermarried with the family. So it's possible she had some Egyptian in her, but she was, for all intents and purposes, Greek.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to be doing a big history lesson too, by the way.
All right. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Just don't quiz me at the end.
I'll try not to. At this point in time, Egypt was filled with natural resources and precious materials and was known as the breadbasket of the ancient world. It produced more grains than it consumed, and it could feed Rome and also starve Rome. So it was like a bartering tool.
Wow. Okay.
The Ptolemies were fueling Egypt from Alexandria, which is the largest city in Egypt. And this is located on the kind of like the northwestern part of the country. And this city was the know-all, end-all, be-all. Economically, it's the center of a great trade network, funneling agricultural products of Egypt as well as luxury products coming in from further east. The Ptolemies brought in scholars, men of letters, physicians, and all of these like new things to the city of Alexandria. And this, in turn, shaped Cleopatra. She learned anything and everything that she could get her hands on: art, science, public speaking, mathematics. The Ptolemaic rulers may have been warmongering and brutal, but they also loved their books and they were scholars.
Wow.
And that leads us to our second point. Cleopatra was a scholar who knew 9 languages. In Alexandria, Egypt's capital at the time, an incredible library housed original written works from around the world. Young Cleopatra spent her youth studying, becoming a scholar, scientist, a gifted chemist, and was known to experiment with different poisons.
Ooh.
Aquatafana. But far more important was her linguistic skill. She spoke 9 languages. I did see some references that said it was up to 12, but she was the first Ptolemaic ruler to speak Egyptian. All that knowledge and language skill was put to good use as the ruler of Egypt, and none of the Ptolemies had known ancient Egypt prior to Cleopatra. In 58 BC, the Romans annexed the island of Cyprus, and on these accusations of piracy, this drove Eulotes' brother, so Cleopatra's uncle, his name was Ptolemy of Cyprus, to commit suicide. Instead of enduring this exile of Paphos, which is in Cyprus area. Basically, he was going to be exiled to this area. He chose to kill himself versus being exiled.
Okay.
Eulotes, Cleopatra's father, remained publicly silent on the death of his brother, in a decision which, along with ceding traditional Ptolemaic territories to the Romans, damaged his credibility among subjects already enraged with his economic policies he had at the time. So this led Eulotes also to be exiled from Egypt to Rome. Cleopatra most likely accompanied her father during this exile. Eulotes allowed his other daughter and rival, Beatrice IV, Cleopatra's sister, to claim his throne in Egypt because he was being exiled to Rome. There was this give and take between the Ptolemies and Egypt and Rome. We're going to get into a little bit of Julius Caesar too, like the power. I tried to simplify it a lot and make it make sense a little bit, but it was extremely fascinating. I was like so fascinated by this. So Eulotes and Cleopatra leave Rome, and with a military force, Berenice is killed as they return to Egypt. Now, the Roman financiers of Eulotes, remained determined to restore him to power. Aulus Gabinius, lots of names too, Aulus Gabinius, the Roman governor for Syria, was persuaded to invade Egypt and restore Eulotes. So this is kind of the power behind it.
I guess anybody who controls Egypt has the power to feed everybody. I mean, cities would fall without Egypt. So
absolutely. All the resources and stuff. That's why I kind of started a little bit with that, because it was it was a power play. You lead Egypt, you lead everybody. Yeah. Like you, the man or the woman. So Aulus Gabinius, the Roman governor of Syria, was persuaded to invade Egypt to restore Eulotes. As a young cavalier officer, Mark Antony was under Gabinius's command. He distinguished himself by preventing Euletes from massacring the inhabitants, and Mark Antony rescued the body of Archelaus, who was the husband of Berenice IV.
Okay.
So Berenice was killed, her husband was also killed, but Mark Antony was in charge of like not allowing the desecration, like still honoring them as humans, right? Mm-hmm. So Archelaus, he was killed in battle. Mark Antony helped ensure that he had a proper royal burial. Cleopatra, who was 14 at the time, traveled on this Roman expedition to Egypt with her father, and years later, Mark Antony professed that he had fallen in love with her at that time, the first time he met her.
Well, 14 back then is like a 25-year-old woman today.
No, exactly.
And also, every time you say Antony, that's exactly how
Antony.
A lot of New Yorkers pronounce Anthony. Like, Antony.
When I was writing this up, I had to correct myself a lot and not put the H in there. Because I did. I was like, it's not Anthony.
It's Antony.
It's not like the pop singer Mark Anthony.
No.
It's
Antony.
Mark Antony. Antony. So when Euletes died in 51 BC of natural causes, at the age of 18, Cleopatra became the Queen of Egypt. As a woman, however, she could not rule alone. And this brings us to our third point.
Ooh.
Cleopatra married both of her brothers.
So, oh my Lord, I guess it's back then, you know.
Yeah. Per their father's will, she shared the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII Theos. So I'm just going to call him Theos. He was 10 years old at the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She was 18 at this time?
She was 18.
Oof,
mm-hmm.
Boy.
Cleopatra took Theos as her husband. The Ptolemaic rulers distinguished themselves by marrying their siblings. Sibling marriage in ancient Egypt goes back to the beginning of time as a way to preserve kind of the purity in their bloodline. More than a dozen of Cleopatra's ancestors tied the knot with either their cousins or their siblings. And in fact, Cleopatra's parents were probably brother and sister as well. Siblings marriage was not something that was practiced with Greek Macedonians, so the idea seemed to enter, historically speaking, if like you're talking about history books, into the Ptolemaic history. So prior to that, for Greek Macedonians, it wasn't practiced, but the Ptolemaic people come in and they start marrying each other. That's where the family love ended, though, once they got married and had this battle for power. If they weren't marrying each other, they were murdering each other. Some squabbling siblings killed each other. Mothers decapitated their children, all for the glory of power. And I mentioned this earlier. This is a throwback to our season 3 premiere. We did female serial killers last season. In our premiere, it was episode 73. We talked about the La Costa of Gaul. Do you remember?
Yes. Wait, where was she though? Was she in Egypt?
I think she was in Italy.
Italy. Okay. Yes, I remember her. My God. Yeah.
But the La Costa of Gaul actually is after the Cleopatra time frame, because if you're talking about the reigning and stuff of when Romans came and took over Egypt and kind of their power. And when I was reading some of the history, one of the leaders that La Costa was working for, because she was the hired poisoner,
right?
Remember? For the family.
Yes.
We're going to kind of get into that in a minute, but one of the kings or monarchies that she worked for came after the Romans took over Egypt.
Okay.
And after Cleopatra died. Because Cleopatra was 8 years older than her brother, the assumption was that she would be the dominant one in the relationship. She saw her brother's age as a chance to grow her own power, but she wasn't alone. Theos attracted others, also looking to elevate their status, such as his advisor, the notable eunuch, Pothinus, and his sister, and Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe. Arsinoe seemed to be a supporter of Theos' faction, and throughout the beginning of the reign, Cleopatra looked at Arsinoe as a threat to her, and a threat to her throne.
Right.
I mean, it's another sister.
Yeah.
You don't love them, you hate them. Pothinus was also regarded as a kind of sinister force behind Theos' throne. He had a personal ambition and tried to position Theos to become the leader by suppressing the powers and aspirations of Cleopatra. However, Cleopatra already showed inclinations to act on her own behalf. This minimizes the influence of those elites that made up their inner circle within Alexandria. It's like you're one or you're the other. Like, you know, which Kardashian are you?
Right.
Which New Jersey housewives are you? Regardless, she still became a well-spoken diplomat and over time expanded Egypt's territory. Cleopatra's drive for autonomy was very risky at this time, considering the last 4 Ptolemaic queens who wanted sole rule were murdered. Cleopatra ended up having people test her food because poison in the Ptolemaic court society was used frequently. We talked about that also in the La Costa of Gaul episode. The poison was efficient, and you really never knew where it came from or who was behind it. Poison, again, we talked about in previous crime chats, was a substance easy to acquire. Given the politics of Alexandria, it also became a way of life, and it was just natural to have somebody test their food for them, see if they keel over and die.
Yeah, I'm sure it still goes on today. It's not as like talked about. I'm sure
Sure.
world leaders have their food tested or something.
Or something, yes. Now, Theos and Cleopatra quickly became enemies. Cleopatra, now 21 years old, found herself in the Sinai Desert trying to raise an army to regain her control. She received some help from a very powerful source. To take back control of Egypt, Cleopatra joined forces with the Roman ruler, Julius Caesar, and in the process, she gave birth to his son.
There you go, Thenos, whatever the hell his name is. There you go.
Oh, Theos. Yeah. So when Theos realized that his sister was in the palace consorting directly with Caesar, he attempted to basically get the Alexandria people to riot and kind of fight against this. Like, he was throwing out all this propaganda against his sister. It didn't work. He was arrested by Caesar.
Oh, he was. Oh, he's young.
He was.
He's very young here because she's 21 now. So he's got to be what, 13?
Yep, 13. Yep.
Oh.
And when Caesar came in, he arrested Theos and then used his very well oratorical skill to calm the crowd down.
Like speaking to them, just being like,
Yes.
shut up, everybody, just sit down. There's nothing to see here.
He was just like calming them down. Like, it's all good. Like, we're okay. Caesar's got it. Got control of this situation.
Right.
So Caesar then brought Cleopatra and Theos before an assembly in Alexandria, where Caesar revealed the written will of their father, naming Cleopatra and Theos as joint heirs, saying, hey, remember, your dad wanted you to rule together. Caesar then attempted to arrange for the other two siblings, Arsinoe, the sister, and Ptolemy the 14th, which was another brother, to rule together in Cyprus. So Caesar's like, you two over there, we're going to put you in Cyprus, and just basically to remove any potential for other siblings to come and take over.
He's protecting her.
He is. And I mean,
wow.
Baby mama at this point.
Right. And he's got some skin in the game now. He's got
does.
a kid. That's, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So removing the rivals. But this also appeased the Ptolemaic subjects who were still bitter over the loss of Cyprus to the Romans. There were some Ptolemaics that were in Cyprus at the time. Romans came in and took over that. And some of them were still kind of bitter. But once they allowed the Ptolemaic brother and sister of Arsinoe and Ptolemy the 14th to go and rule Cyprus, they're like, oh, well, okay. So sometime between January and March 47 BC, Caesar's reinforcements arrived back to Egypt. With Caesar's troops, Cleopatra managed to reclaim her throne from her younger brother, and she ruled once more. Wary of repeating the same mistake Cleopatra's sister had done, Berenice IV, in having a female monarch as the sole ruler, Caesar appointed Cleopatra's now 12-year-old brother, Ptolemy the 14th, as a joint ruler with the 22-year-old Cleopatra in the nominal sibling marriage. Caesar's like, you will marry your brother once again, because we can't have you as the sole ruler as a vagina.
It's a vagina.
So, even though she was married to her 12-year-old brother, she's 22, so she's 10 years older than this one.
Wow.
She was still living separately, privately, with Julius Caesar. Even though he told her, you'll marry your brother because you have to marry somebody, right?
Right.
Now, the exact date at which Cyprus was actually returned back to Cleopatra's control, because at some point, Ptolemy the 14th was there with Arsinoe, brother and sister. Something happened to Arsinoe at some point in time, but Ptolemy came back from Cyprus, married Cleopatra, and then Cleopatra started to gain control over Cyprus now. That time frame isn't known, like when she actually got control back over of Cyprus, but there was a governor there under her lead by 42 BC. So that's only a matter of like 5 years. Caesarion, Cleopatra's alleged child with Julius Caesar, was born the 23rd of June in 47 BC, and he was originally named Pharaoh Caesar. Perhaps owing to his still childless marriage with his current wife, Cleopatra, Caesar remained very publicly silent about Caesarion, about his son. Maybe like in private, I think in private it was one thing where he was accepting and like, I am Caesarion, I am your father.
Hey.
Like one thing, right? But in public, in the public eye,
Yeah.
he denied. Like he was childless with his wife, Cleopatra.
I guess divorce back then was not a thing.
No.
Oh, so
No.
like, because if he just got together with Cleopatra, that would have been a power couple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cleopatra, on the other hand, made repeated official declarations that this is Julius Caesar's son. In the summer of 41 BC, Mark Antony established his headquarters at Tarsos in Anatolia, another area in that region. And basically, as he was out there, he summoned Cleopatra to him several times. She rebuffed until Mark Antony's Roman commander convinced her to go. Mark Antony was like, come, come, come. Cleopatra's like, no, no, no. Mark Antony sends his Roman commander. Roman commander convinces her. Here, once Cleopatra gets there, Mark Antony expressed his desire not only to become allies, but to establish a personal, romantic, sexual relationship with Cleopatra because he's loved her since she was 14.
Boy.
Cleopatra also invited Mark Antony to come to Egypt before he left Tarsos, which led Mark Antony to visit Alexandria, where he was well received by the populace of Alexandria. Like, they loved him. They absolutely loved him there.
I was going to say, I'm thinking about the movie with Elizabeth Taylor. Is this when she rolls out of the rug? Like, ta-da! Mark Antony, you're here! Do you remember that scene? She was so happy to see him?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, they loved, like, the people of Alexandria loved him because of how he basically rolled out the red carpet for her father, Eulodes.
That's right.
To take power back.
Brought his body back.
Well, no. The father was exiled to Rome. Mark Antony was part of the power to Eulodes, the father, take control back.
Okay.
So a lot of people remembered this, and they were like, we love you, Mark Antony. They also liked him because as he went there, as he arrived in Alexandria, he came there without like a military force. And the people were happy about that because Julius Caesar, when he came there, Julius Caesar came armed to the nines kind of thing.
Right.
Cleopatra carefully chose Mark Antony as her partner for producing further heirs, and he was deemed to be the most powerful Roman figure following Caesar's demise.
Wow.
By the spring of 40 BC, Mark Antony left Egypt due to troubles in Syria, where his governor Lucius Decidius Saxa was killed. These names, I'm telling you.
Decidius.
Cleopatra provided Mark Antony with 200 ships for his campaign as a payment for her newly acquired territories, saying, thanks for these territories, here's some ships. She would not see Mark Antony again until 37 BC, 3 years later, but she maintained correspondence, and evidence suggests that she kept a spy on him at the camp where he was at. Like,
bet she did.
Keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Keep an eye. By the end of 40 BC, Cleopatra had given birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The boy was named Alexander Helios, and the girl was named Cleopatra Selene II, both whom Mark Antony acknowledged as his children.
Wow.
Mark Antony also then summoned Cleopatra to Antioch to discuss other pressing issues because he left for Syria. There was a lot of like territorial stuff that was going on, and he's like, I can't stay here and fuck you all day. I got to go do some work. Right? So Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to where he is. She brought their now 3-year-old twins to Antioch, where this is believed Mark Antony saw them for the first time. And this is probably also, historians think that that's where they received their surnames. So Helios, Alexander Helios, and then Selene for Cleopatra II Selene, as part of Mark Antony and Cleopatra's ambitious plans for the future. They were really a power couple too, like honestly. In order to stabilize the East, Mark Antony not only enlarged Cleopatra's domain, he also established new ruling dynasties and client rulers who would be loyal to him. Like, it was a tit-for-tat like thing. Quid pro quo. I'll give you this, you give me that. You know, we'll be allies, we'll be friends.
Right.
Still works that way to this day. You know, if I give you this, what are you going to give me?
Yeah, he seems like he respects her too, which is nice.
Oh, very much. I think so, yes. We'll find out what happens.
Oh boy, okay.
In 36 BC, Cleopatra accompanied Mark Antony to the Euphrates in his journey towards invading the Parthian Empire. She returned to Egypt because she was also pregnant again. By the summer of 36 BC, she had given birth to Ptolemy Philadelphus, her second son with Mark Antony. In an interesting twist, Cleopatra was said to have brainwashed Mark Antony with witchcraft and sorcery, and was as dangerous as Homer's Helen of Troy in destroying civilization. So she got haters. Like, I can just see this on a reality TV show right now.
Yeah.
Like, they were jealous of her, so they started, like, saying, you know, she does witchcraft and sorcery. She brainwashed him. She's got beer-flavored nipples. Who wouldn't want that, you know?
Right, and she also has, I'm sure a lot of this is coming from her husband, brothers, or sister.
Oh, or Theos. Well, Theos, I think Theos had actually been killed by this point. But, like, yeah, so her siblings who were rivals because they were not named in the will kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. So here's another name, but he's an important person. Octavius. This is Mark Antony's then friend who supported both Antony and Caesar's rule. He accused Antony of attempting to subvert Roman freedoms and territorial integrity, which he gave on his speech in the Roman Senate on the first day of his consulship. So he was voted into this position or given this position as part of the Roman Senate. His inauguration speech, he's saying, that Mark Antony guy, he's trying to subvert your freedoms and he doesn't have integrity to the territories that he's providing and blah, 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 blah. And this was on the 1st of January of 33 BC in Rome. At the time as well, when Mark Antony was also appointed, they actually had this joint command. So Octavius and Mark Antony had this joint command, but that expired on the 31st of December of 33 BCE. So Octavius gives the speech on the 1st of January, first day of the year, last day of the year, their joint command expired. Mark Antony declared Caesarion, Julius Caesar's son with Cleopatra, as the true heir of Caesar in an attempt to undermine Octavius.
Wow, okay.
Is it Octavian or Octavius?
I like that name, though. That's the first one. Besides Cleopatra, I like Octavian.
Yeah. So now in 32 BCE, Octavian is a private citizen. No public office because his command had expired, right? He started to introduce pieces of legislation against Mark Antony. During the next senatorial session, Octavian entered the Senate House with armed guards and levied his own accusations. More than 200 consuls and senators were super intimidated by this, and they're like, okay, because they had supported Mark Antony, now, because of this coercion, they are on Octavian's side. Either they supported Octavian or they fled. A lot of them fled Rome to join Mark Antony in Egypt or Syria or wherever he was at that time. So you're with me or you're against me kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Mark Antony and Cleopatra traveled together to Ephesus in 32 BCE, where she provided him with 200 of his 800 ships that he had. Wary of having Octavian's propaganda that he had been spewing at this time confirmed by the public, Mark Antony advisors attempted to persuade him to have Cleopatra excluded from this naval campaign against Octavian. Cleopatra was like, no, you're wrong. I'm the ruler in Egypt, so I'm going to stay here. She refused Mark Antony's request that she return to Egypt, indicating that by blocking Octavian in Greece, basically her argument was, I'm not going to go back just because I'm a woman. My ships can actually block Octavian in Greece to be able to defend Egypt versus going back to Egypt and having that barrier right outside of the country. You have the barrier a little bit more towards the conflict. Cleopatra's insistence that she be involved in this battle for Greece led to the defections of a lot of prominent Romans.
They didn't want a woman in charge? Is this why?
Yeah.
They didn't want a woman?
She's nuts. She needs to go back to Egypt. This isn't going to work.
Wow.
Octavian's propaganda included a public reading of Mark Antony's will, which included that Caesarion was named the heir of Caesar, that Mark Antony should be buried alongside Cleopatra in Egypt instead of Rome, where he was a Roman citizen, from Rome, right? And that Alexandria would be made the new capital of the Roman Republic. With Antony's will made public, Octavian and Rome then declared war on Cleopatra, not Mark Antony. So they're spewing all this stuff out in the public about Mark Antony, but Cleopatra is the one that they were actually targeting because they want Egypt.
Yeah.
The legal argument for war was based less on Cleopatra's territorial acquisitions, all the land and stuff that Mark Antony had gotten for her, but it was more on the fact that she in turn was providing military support to a private citizen, Mark Antony, because remember, his command had expired and he's doing all this stuff as a private citizen and basically saying you are arming a militia. So we're declaring war on you, Cleopatra. So Mark Antony and Cleopatra, overall in this conflict, right, they had a larger fleet than Octavian did, but the crews of Mark Antony and Cleopatra's navy were not really well trained, and most of them were captains of merchant vessels and that kind of thing. Whereas Octavian had a fully professional, naval trained force.
Right. Probably could have used the militia.
Probably.
It's not America. You would have had a militia. You would have had Grandpa out there.
That's right. Fuck yeah! Some people in Mark Antony's camp suggested abandoning this naval conflict because they weren't well trained and then retreat inland. However, Cleopatra urged this naval confrontation to keep Octavian's fleet away from Egypt. Like, we're going to meet you where you are, so you stay away from my home, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
On the 2nd of September 30 BCE, the naval forces of Octavian met those of Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Cleopatra commanded 60 ships at the mouth of the Ambracian Gulf. At the rear of the fleet, she was kind of towards and the ship in the back, in what was likely a move by Antony's officers to marginalize her during battle. Like, if you're gonna stay, you give me this argument that you're gonna fight where we are to help defend Egypt and have this blockade, then you need to be in the back.
Wow.
Mark Antony had ordered that their ships should have sailed on board for a better chance to pursue or to flee from the enemy, which Cleopatra, concerned about defending Egypt, of course, used to swiftly move throughout the area of this combat with a strategic withdrawal. So if you think about this time too, the sails of the ships had different significant meanings of who was on board at the time.
Yeah.
And the different sails should have either to continue to defend or to flee.
Okay.
It's something with strategic placements of these sails. Either way, Cleopatra actually made a strategic withdrawal from this area, and she fell back while the other ships were still forward.
Okay.
Roman writers actually accused Cleopatra of cowardly deserting Mark Antony, but their original intention may have been to break the blockade and salvage as much of their fleet as possible. Kind of sounds like, too, like she might have ship hopped.
Right. Maybe she was doing like a decoy ship, too.
Yeah. Yes. So some Roman writers would later accuse her of deserting Mark Antony in this time.
Of course.
Basically, they were saying they were trying to break this blockade and salvage as much of their fleet as possible because they're getting fucking hammered. They're not doing very good at all. Mark Antony followed Cleopatra and boarded her ship as the two escaped the battle and headed to Tenarion, which is in Greece. After he boarded her ship, he avoided her for 3 days on the ship until her ladies in waiting at Tenarion urged him to speak to her. I don't know why. I just thought that was interesting because maybe he didn't agree with how she withdrew.
Yeah, that disagreement. Okay.
Maybe he did feel deserted by her. Like, we're in this together and you left me.
Yeah. And she is a queen. Mm-hmm. Her being there is a liability also. Like,
sure.
She, unfortunately, like, as capable as she may have been to be there, protecting her at all costs is important too. Like, yeah. I don't know. She put her life and Egypt at risk being on that ship.
Yes. But I also think it was I would say brave, but made a statement. I don't know, for whatever reason, Joffrey in Game of Thrones, right? Joffrey is like, I want to go out to the front line and I want to fight because I'm a leader and I'm the king.
Right.
And they never really let him do that. And they thought that he was a coward. So I picture that kind of in the same way where, like, if Cleopatra didn't go out there herself, then
the people wouldn't follow to fight.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But if she was captured, she would have been like, I mean, that's the worst part. Not dying is being captured. Like, what would happen to her? That's just,
well, we're going to find out.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So the Battle of Actium raged on without Cleopatra and Mark Antony until the morning of September 3rd, which this started, I believe, September 2nd. So that within the next day. And this was followed by massive defections of officers, troops, and allied kings from Cleopatra and Mark Antony's side to Octavian's side. They got their asses kicked. They lost.
Yeah.
So after this Battle of Actium, Mark Antony and Cleopatra returned to Egypt. The couple then went their separate ways. Antony to Cyrene to raise more troops, and Cleopatra to the harbor Alexandria in an attempt to mislead oppositional party and portray the activities that happened in Greece as a victory.
Boy,
so
she's a politician.
She is. We won. Have no fear. She was afraid that the news about the actual outcome of the battle would lead to a rebellion, which is why she was like, we're great, we're good, everything's fine. Fire burning in the background. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Cleopatra was forced into negotiations with Octavian. She requested that her children should inherit Egypt and that Antony should be allowed to live in exile in Egypt with her. She offered Octavian money in the future and immediately had started to send him lavish gifts. Octavian sent his diplomat, stupid names, Thyros, to Cleopatra after she threatened to burn herself and the vast amounts of her treasure within a tomb already under construction. So she's sending him all these gifts. He's not talking to her. He's like, I don't want it, send it back or whatever. Then Octavian finally gets this notice that if you don't talk to me, I'm going to burn myself and all my treasure with it.
Ow.
So he's like, okay, I send a diplomat.
Yeah.
When the diplomat got there, he's like, hey, Cleopatra, we need you to kill Mark Antony.
What?
And we'll spare your life.
Oh, no.
But Mark Antony caught on. He suspected this foul intent and had that diplomat, Thytherthith, flogged and his dead body sent back to Octavian without a deal.
Mark
and
Antony.
Like, I see your diplomat and I raise you.
Yes.
So after negotiations that ultimately produced no results, Octavian set out to invade Egypt in the spring of 30 BCE. Cleopatra hid herself in her tomb with her close attendants and sent a message to Mark Antony that she had committed suicide. In despair, Mark Antony responded to this by stabbing himself in the stomach and taking his own life at the age of 53.
Oh my God.
According to Plutarch, the Greek philosopher, historian, biographer, essayist, priest, all things. He was in the Roman era like about 100 years after Cleopatra did a lot of this historical documentation.
Okay.
So according to this guy, Plutarch, Mark Antony was still dying when he was then brought to Cleopatra at her tomb, basically telling her that he had died honorably. Octavian entered Alexandria, occupied the palace, seized Cleopatra's 3 youngest children, the twins and the other boy that she had with Mark Antony. When a spy informed her that Octavian planned to move her and her children to Rome in the next 3 days, she prepared for suicide, as she had no intentions of being paraded in Rome as a triumph, where I guess her sister Arsinoe, that had been done. She's like, I don't want to be like Arsinoe. Like, I don't want that to happen to me. And it's actually unclear if the suicide on August 10th of 30 BCE at the age of 39, if that took place actually in the palace or in the tomb. We know that documents show that she put herself in the tomb, but once she found out that Octavian was making them leave, nobody knows exactly like where her suicide might have happened. But she was said to be accompanied by her servants who also took their own lives. Although the common view of Cleopatra was one of a prolific seductress, she only had these 2 known sexual partners, the fathers of her children, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, 2 of the most prominent Romans at the time, who were most likely to ensure the survival of her dynasty in the Ptolemaic dynasty. Plutarch, that philosopher, documentarian, whatever, he described Cleopatra as having a stronger personality and charming wit than actual physical beauty. And after all that, we're finally reached our 4th point. Cleopatra was no beauty.
I could see that, though. I could see her being appealing to strong, powerful men because of her brain, not necessarily her beauty. So
yeah. Well, and men were either extremely attracted to it or extremely intimidated by it.
Yes, I could see that too, yeah.
Roman propaganda painted Cleopatra as a debauched temptress who used her sex appeal as a political weapon, but she may have been more renowned for her intellect than her actual appearance. Cleopatra has been portrayed as a beautiful seductress who bent powerful men to her will by sheer force of her attractiveness and opening her legs, but that's not necessarily the truth. For his part, the ancient writer Plutarch claimed that Cleopatra's beauty was, quote, not altogether incomparable, end quote, and that it was instead her smooth talking and irresistible charm that made her so desirable.
You mean she didn't look like Elizabeth Taylor? What are you saying? Like, what are you telling me right now? Like, I don't understand. Like,
I think so.
That movie basically gave us what we think.
Yes.
Like, we don't.
Exactly.
It's so skewed. Like, we see that. That's what we see.
That's all you see.
She's gorgeous.
Elizabeth Taylor is Cleopatra.
Yeah, exactly.
Cleopatra is Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, God.
So the temptress image, or, image in people's minds, was created by the Romans after Cleopatra's death, who wrote their own version of history and was perpetuated over the years by the likes of Shakespeare, centuries of famous paintings, and more recently Hollywood, as we just talked about. The reality was Cleopatra was no beauty. Just like today, rulers of Egypt had their image cast onto currency. The coins found from her time, like things were excavated or saved or whatever, and they found these coins. Cleopatra's face is forged in gold with a hooked nose, a high forehead, wide sunken eyes. Very different from the vixen that we've seen on the silver screen.
Right. Ugh.
Quote, Cleopatra was much more concerned about having a strong and dominant appearance than to be pretty or beautiful by feminine standards of the day, end quote. And this came from Sheila Ager. She's a professor of classical studies at the University of Waterloo. Sheila said, quote, "She was sending the message that she was as good and as valid as a ruler of any of the men who had gone before her," end quote.
Wow.
Yes, sister.
Yes, absolutely.
Regarding the currency, this brings us to our next point. Number 5, she was probably the richest person in the world.
Really? And
Yeah.
how did she not win this war? Being so wealthy. I mean, I would have bought Octavian or whatever his name is.
Well, she tried. She sent him lavish gifts. She was sending him all kinds of different things. And he's like, nope, don't want it.
I would have paid somebody a hefty price to get rid of him. I would have brought Aqua Tofana in.
Yeah. At the height of her power 2,000 years ago, Cleopatra's empire stretched across the Mediterranean from modern-day Libya in the west through Egypt and Syria in the east.
Wow.
The largest amount of territory any woman has ever ruled.
Wow.
She was the absolute ruler over 7 million people and the richest woman in the world, worth $95.8 billion in today's currency.
Wow.
Yes. And as we know, money isn't everything, though, and it doesn't always save you in battle.
No.
So this brings us to our last point, number 6. It's likely that Cleopatra wasn't killed by an Egyptian cobra, which is known as an asp. After his defeat, Cleopatra's lover, Mark Antony, ended his life, and Cleopatra's suicide became the stuff of legend. Historians debate even today if she actually allowed herself to be bitten by an asp. Cobra venom is a lethal cocktail of neurotoxin and anticoagulant. This means that it would paralyze you, liquefy your insides. The bite is also very painful. The fangs of an Egyptian cobra are over an inch long, and there's a lot of force behind that. But that's not where the real pain comes from. The venom causes tremendous swelling and causes something called compartment syndrome. The tissue is so swollen so badly that there's no room for the skin to expand. The tightness of the skin is excruciating. The only way to save the limb is to actually cut open the skin, allowing the flesh to burst out.
Wow.
It's like,
oh my.
You know, like, so you get something that's like swollen and you feel your skin being really tight, and like if you
Like lancet?
pierce.
That's gross. Wow.
Cellulitis is the first thing that comes to mind. Like, have you ever seen
I've had that.
Like, somebody with cellulitis, where it's really, really swollen and you need to like release that pressure.
I got attacked by a dog and my entire arm got swollen because this doctor at the ER stitched up a dog bite, and they're not allowed to do that. You're supposed to let them drain.
Yeah.
So within 3 days, my arm was triple the size. I was rushed to the hospital. I was almost toxic, and they had to compress it. They had to compress it down to where everything was. Yeah, it was gross. It was wow.
Yes. Well, if left untreated, if left unbursted, the asp bite is lethal. The first noticeable effect is the neurotoxin, leading to confusion, paralysis, or partial paralysis. As this happens, the anticoagulant causes the body's clotting mechanisms to stop working, which causes internal hemorrhaging everywhere, all at once, all at the same time. Untreated, someone bitten by an Egyptian cobra will live only 4 to 6 hours and die of excruciating pain. So, with this legend that Cleopatra died of enticing an asp to bite her, what really actually took place is not known. So soon after her death, rumors began circulating that she allowed this asp to bite her breast. The snake is a symbol of Egyptian royalty, and Egyptian queens have snakes on their brow. One senior lecturer of Egyptology, they said, quote, "It was very symbolic. It was a good death," end quote. And in essence, the story of an asp biting Cleopatra was fitting and symbolic, especially if, she had been the ruler for 30 years at this time. Or, well, almost 30 years. And it was a perfect end to Cleopatra's incredible story. But some archaeologists don't really buy that. Cleopatra was a gifted chemist and knew her way around poisons. She was also known to conceal a deadly poison in one of her hair combs. Historian Strabo notes that she may have applied a fatal ointment. With this in mind, many scholars now suspect that she used a pin dipped in some form of potent toxin, snake venom or otherwise, and pinned herself. Like, stuck herself.
Yeah.
But the actual circumstances of her death are unclear, as is her final resting place.
I believe that second one. I do not. I think it's very romantic. I think it's a very constructed story about the asp. But I think that she didn't live like a stupid woman, and she's not going to die like a stupid woman. She knows what the snake can do to her and how uncomfortable that would be. And if she knows poisons, she's going to be like, "This is what happened to me. Here's the story," and then go take our
And the
life.
only way I can see it actually what happened is for that notoriety.
And maybe Octavian constructed it like, I don't want everybody in Egypt to hate me, so give her some, like,
Well,
power. Oh, okay.
so Octavian was said to have been angered by this outcome,
Oh.
that he had learned she had been bitten by a snake.
Mm-hmm.
But had Cleopatra buried in a royal fashion next to Mark Antony in her tomb, which is believed to be somewhere in Alexandria, Egypt, nobody knows where she's at.
We have no idea.
Nope. People are still trying to find her to this day.
That's crazy.
Cleopatra's physician, Olympos, did not explain her cause of death, although a popular belief is the snake bite.
Mm-hmm.
This was also likely part of Octavian's propaganda, that it wasn't just one asp, it was multiple. She got bit multiple times by multiple snakes. Other theories include poison, as mentioned, by either a cheese grater or a needle, so like a needle injection, but they were, when I was reading it, a cheese grater, like on your skin.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like that was poisoned and then she like grated. Ugh, I don't know.
God. Oh.
Or ingesting some sort of ointment. However, it was noted no venomous snake or snakes were found with her body, but she did have a tiny puncture wound on her arm that could have been caused by a needle. Cleopatra the Seventh, Thea Philopatata.
Philopatata.
Philopator? Cleopatra left a legacy. As the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, she was well educated, intelligent, and an astute politician who brought peace and prosperity to Egypt and ensured her place in history. And that is the Crime and Cosmetics episode of Cleopatra. I want to say Cleopatra the Great, but Cleopatra.
Oh my God. I love her. Yeah, I totally think that Octavian sent out some more propaganda about her death because, one, if he did find her dead or if it was reported that she took her own life, poison, because the Egyptian people could revolt again that he killed their queen. So
Sure, of course.
you can't be that powerful without being loved by your people. Like, I'm sure she was loved. You can't be that rich and powerful without,
Yes.
so I think probably he's saying, oh, I didn't kill her. She killed herself. And, and she did it in the most romantic way possible. And her death was so painful and she bled for you people. I could just see, but one of the most famous tales. And that would be amazing if they could find her body, her resting place.
I know. Some of the articles and stuff that I read were talking about, it was earlier this year, still trying to find her body.
Yeah.
Where she was buried. So that was 30 BCE. So that would have been 2,050 years ago.
Right.
2,054 years ago. Yeah.
I watched a documentary on her bust, that head bust that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that they feel like they're 99.9% sure that she was of Greek origin with the facial construction and with the nose, the bridge, and all this stuff. And I'm like, that makes total sense. But you never know until because we don't have the body. But yeah, that makes total sense. So,
or even she had children. So there's a lineage. So Caesarion was I didn't include this in the story, but he was tricked by Octavian. Basically, if you come back, I'll let you rule over Egypt. And Octavian killed Caesarion. I think he was only like 14 or something. Maybe he might have been a little bit older than that at the time.
okay.
But the other 3 children were taken back to Rome. There wasn't much that was known about the 2 boys, but the girl did have some sort of role later. So Cleopatra II, Selene or Serene, she had some role later. And actually, some of the busts that are out there, historians are like, we don't know if this is Cleopatra or Cleopatra's daughter.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
So there's a lineage there.
Yeah, and I wonder if her line still exists today.
That was going to be my point. If we don't have her body, we can't get her DNA, so it's hard to find a lineage to it through genetic genealogy.
Right.
But it's somebody out there somewhere is related to her.
Yes.
We're all related to each other. It's fine.
Oh my God. No, that's a great story. I love it. But Octavian obviously killed a 14-year-old son, so he does have an evil side.
Yeah.
He's
he tricked Caesarion, saying, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to harm you. Come back. I got you, bro. Yeah, tricked him and ended up killing him.
Caesarion was Caesar's baby.
Correct.
So he killed the possible Caesar of Rome, which it was totally strategic.
I spoke incorrectly. So it was Octavian going, come with me to Rome. You are Caesar's son.
Right.
You can have that power. That was the trick, not to Egypt. Because I think Caesarion was still in Egypt. And I laugh every time I see Caesarion because I'm thinking like a female Caesarion.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if there's any connection there because first of all, have you ever watched that movie, The Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Oh, yes.
Okay. The Greek dad, he is convinced that every word comes from Greece. Like, they invented everything. So, like, this is close ties to Greece. So, like,
true.
I wonder if that has any connection to Caesarion today.
Maybe.
I mean, we have the words Olympo or whatever, Olympia, whatever you said.
Olympos.
I know that Octavia has an actress today.
There's so many Greek names that I probably didn't pronounce right, but whatever.
That's okay. You mean Philippotato is not a real thing? That's not Cleopatra? That's not her last name? Philippotato?
Phonetically, it's Philippotato.
It's Philippotato. Okay. Well, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I love this. I love learning about her.
Fun.
Yeah, she's one of my favorite people. Yeah, so I love learning about her. Well, because I don't leave you hanging, chatters, for more information on this case, please check out After That Crime Chat, only available on Patreon.
Don't forget to follow us, CrimeChat with Nat and Kat, on all of our socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. See what we got going on. Oh, and let us know how you like the re-releases, something new that we're starting in Season 4 on the first Saturday of the month when we take some downtime to research our next story for the remainder of the month. We decided we're going to re-release some stuff, so let us know what you would like us to re-release in the future.
Yes, and we just re-released Susan Smith because she's been in the news.
Yes.
That is a crazy case. All right. Well, remember, Crime Chat with Nat and Kat. When you become a VIP chatter to our Patreon, you'll have access to bonus episodes, behind the scenes, bloopers, and free merch. And check out some merch in the works for the season of Into the Unknown.
And be sure to check out our next episode. It's our episode before Christmas, Nat's story. Ooh. Are you going to be doing anything
Christmas related?
Krampus related? We did Krampus last year, but
maybe.
Oh, I get to unwrap it like a present.
Yes, you do not want to miss it.
Either that or open a sack of coal. Either way. We'll see you next time, chatters.
Bye.